A very good afternoon to all of you, and welcome to the SAARC Special Lecture Series. This is Dr. Beena Gandhi Deori, Deputy Director Research, SAARC Cultural Centre, Sri Lanka. SAARC Special Lecture Series aims to bring professionals and experts from various backgrounds to share insights from their field of research to promote culture diversity through different mediums and create an inclusive environment. In today's segment, we have Dr. V. Selvakumar from India. Before we proceed with his lecture, we invite Director of SAARC Cultural Centre, Madam Renuka Kanaike, to address. Over to you, Madam.
Thank you, Dr. Beena. Dr. Selvakumar and esteemed guests, it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to this SAARC special lecture on early historic urbanization and urban rural landscapes in South Asia. South Asia, with its rich tapestry of history, has long been a cradle of civilization. The topic of today's lecture explores an important chapter of our shared heritage, the emergence of early cities and their interplay with rural spaces. Understanding these dynamics is crucial for appreciating how our ancestors shaped the physical landscape and the socio-cultural and economic networks that continue to influence the region today. We are honored to have Dr. Selvakumar Veerasamy, a distinguished expert in this field, with us today. Your insights promise to shed light on these complex and fascinating interactions, enriching our understanding of South Asia's historical urban landscapes. On behalf of everyone present, I extend our heartfelt gratitude for taking the time to share your expertise with us. I would also like to extend a warm welcome to all of you who have joined us today. Your presence reflects the importance of this topic and our collective commitment to preserving and learning from our shared past. I encourage you all to actively participate, ask questions, share your thoughts, and engage with the ideas presented. Together, we can foster a meaningful dialogue that transcends borders and deepens our regional connections. Once again, thank you all for being here. Let us now look forward to a thought provoking and inspiring session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam. I also take the opportunity to welcome all the online participants and also the representative from the SAARC Secretariat, Kathmandu. As I have already mentioned, we have with us Dr. Selvakumar from the Department of Maritime History and Marine Archaeology, Tamil University, Thanjavur, India. He is currently the coordinator at the Center for Indian Ocean Studies at Tamil University. With this brief introduction, I request our speaker to start his presentation on the early historic urbanization and urban-rural landscape in South Asia. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. I would like to thank the SAARC Association for the cultural studies and the director and the deputy director for giving me an opportunity to make this presentation. Because of the limitations of the bandwidth, I will directly switch on my presentation. The topic I have chosen today is early historic urbanization, urban and rural landscapes in South Asia. As you know, South Asia covers the broader region, including India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Maldives, and Bangladesh, and Nepal, all these areas. I will be broadly focusing on these areas because this area is so vast. I'll not be able to give justification to the entire region in the sense that I'll not be able to present all the slides and all the images because it's so vast. What I will be doing is to give some of the select images so that the concept could be illustrated. So before going into the urbanization of early historic South Asia, we need to look at what is urbanization. When we deal with history, we have several processes. We study material culture, we study sources, and then we also study the processes behind. We talk about processes in history such as state formation, social formation, and globalization, and so many other processes that are discussed as part of historical interpretation. Urbanization is also a process which will be seen in the material culture as well as in literature in various forms. For example, in material culture, we will be noticing large cities, sometimes huge buildings, sometimes evidence of script, and so on. In terms of literature, we also find narration of various settlements and settlement categories and their types. So, this urbanization process is presented in various forms. It presents itself in various forms in material manifestation as well as in historical sources. Gordon Childe was a famous archaeologist who proposed 10 criteria for defining the urbanization. He used it to mainly categorize the early Bronze Age civilization. One of the categories of child was large settlements. People generally live in settlements which are smaller in size. Prehistoric people lived in smaller camps. After the Neolithic period, they started living permanently in a settlements which were given certain names. Sometimes these settlements were semi-sedentary, sometimes they were sedentary, and that is how villages began. And these villages become cities at a later point of time as part of Bronze Age civilization as well as in the later period. So one of the criteria for these cities is their size, huge settlements. One. Second was a concentration of wealth among certain group of people. Then the monumental buildings. So, for example, if you take Egyptian civilization, you have pyramids, and then you have other kinds of monuments in all the other civilizations or urbanized society. The monumental building is one of the factors defining urbanization. The next one was writing, evidence of script, where people could put down their ideas using some symbolic codes, which we call as script. The next one, according to Child, was art. Art is basically a manifestation of human thoughts in a very aesthetic fashion. It could be a painting, it could be a sculpture, or it could be any other form of art. Then the knowledge of science and technology, the knowledge of construction, mainly the knowledge of smelting, metallurgy, smelting various metals to create different kinds of artifacts for various cultural and other activities. So they also understand the principles behind the smelting, principles behind certain technology. This is also one of the characteristics of urbanization. Next one was long distance trade. This involves exchange of commodities over a long period of, over a long distance of a long distance, and this is one of the aspects of urbanization. urbanization. Then comes craft specialization, where there are specialists producing different kinds of artifacts, and they specialized in creating certain artifacts. For example, bronze workers, bead workers, ceramic specialists. Like that, there could be specialists focusing on certain kind of material production. Then there is social hierarchy, which is labeled here as stratified society. And then we have residence-based political organization. It is not a kinship-based political organization. Kinship-based political organization is normally seen in a tribal kind of formation. You know that anthropologists have classified societies, for example, Elman Surveys, Martin Fried, and others, into band, tribe, chiefdom, and state as political formations. But these political categories are also criticized by recent anthropologists. And when we look at the entire urbanization and civilization, we can very well understand this is related to the state formation. Subsequent to Gordon Child, several other researchers have relooked at this urbanization theory, and they have put forth their views. For example, Braidwood, Redman, and Carl Wittfogel, who argued that irrigation was one of the important factor for urbanization. However, Gordon Child's 10 criteria still stands tall, but though scholars have modified these ideas. That is why I have listed Gordon Child's ideas first. Then, when we talk about the early historic urbanization, we are dealing with the period roughly between 1600 BCE to 300 CE in South Asia. And this particular period falls after the Indus civilization. Indus civilization is considered as the first urbanization in South India. The mature phase of Indus civilization is placed between 2600 to 1900 BCE. After 1900 BCE, these urban societies became rural societies. Then we have second urbanization in India, in South Asia, around 600 BCE onwards. And another important development in this period is the political organization, development of empires and kingdom. And then we have the development of literature, development of script, and development of various ideologies, including the religious organizations. Then we have external contacts, long distance maritime trade, and their influence, was very important for the second urbanization. We also notice the material manifestations of these urbanization processes across the landscapes in the sites and settlements. Okay, yeah. As I already said, the early historic urbanization is characterized as a second urbanization in the history of Indian subcontinent or South Asia. After the Indus Valley civilization, whose mature phase was placed between 2600 to 1900 BCE. Then there is a gap between 1900 BCE to 600 BCE. Gap in the sense, probably these settlements and these people were living in rural landscapes. Coming to this history of research, there are several scholars who have worked on the early urbanization and the excavation of the cities. And I need not go into the detail. I have listed some of these scholars. For example, Robert Eric Mortimer Wheeler, who excavated the sites of Harappa and Taxila and Archimedu and several other cities. And then A. Ghosh, in a very important paper published in 1973, he discusses the early cities of India. Himanshu Prabhare has studied urbanization in the Western India. And another important scholar who contributed to the study of urbanization was F.R. Alchin, who, apart from publishing several papers, brought out a monograph in 1995 on the early historic cities. Then we also have studies by Makanlal and George Erdosi. All these works have contributed for the better understanding of the second urbanization. Then historian B.D. Chattopadhyaya, in a seminal paper, he discusses about the cities in ancient India. Then Monica Smith, who has excavated the site of Siswalter along with Dr. Abhi Mohanty, has published a very important paper on the cities of early historic period. In Sri Lanka, Siren Dharaniagala, Robin Cunningham, and others worked on the early cities like Anuradhapura, and Schenk has excavated the site of Isamaharama. Similarly, in Mahastangar, several scholars and a French team, they have excavated. Then R. Chambagalakshmi has focused her studies on the urbanization in southern part of India. And then Sonalika Kaul has studied the Sanskrit literature and how the cities are described. And recently, there is an important volume edited by Professor Aloka Prashar Sen that discusses about the urbanization in South India as a whole. H. Vibha Tripathi has contributed. Several scholars have studied the process of urbanization as part of their history writing. Romeo Thapar, R.S. Sharma, they also talk about urbanization, urban decline, and everything. And this is not a very exhaustive work. Supriya Verma, Vishnupriya Basak, and several publications are available. I'm not going to list all of them here. You can see them in the textbook. And now we have the map of South Asia, which has been published by F.R. Alchin. This illustrates the major regions of early historic urbanization. You can see these sites are distributed all across, right from Pakistan and northern part of India down to Sri Lanka, and from Gujarat to Bangladesh. And he has classified the sites according to the size in terms of hectare. And he noticed some of the larger sites are in the Ganga Valley. Ganga Valley is considered as one of the important cultural regions of India, where we have early evidence of rice cultivation from the site of Laguradeva around 6000 plus years BC. And that is one important site where we have Neolithic sites and then subsequent cultural developments. And the Ganga Valley has been very important in terms of its fertile water, as well as the soil that could support huge population and large cities. Probably because of that, this region has huge sites. Then we have northwestern part of South Asia, near Taxila and other. And this region is very important, and it has been very close to the long distance trade route, otherwise known as spice route. Many of the cultural developments and then connectivities reached this region of Gandhara and other neighborhood in the upper Indus region. and that region also has large settlements and large sites and cities in the early period. Then we have central India like Vidisha, Ujjain, and Tirupuri. All these cities in the central Indian region, they come under the next category. Then we have Deccan, where we have medium-sized cities. Then we have cities in the east coast. Then we have in Anuradhapura and Sri Lanka. One thing I would like to point out here is that we need not look at the size of these settlements varying between these regions. Again, if you look at the population density even today, some of these cities are huge, some of these cities are smaller. So these size variation could be because of a number of other factors, and that we need to look into. Uh, that we need to look into. So therefore, these cities had their own indigenous factors contributing to their development, and these factors determining their size. And this is one factor we should keep in mind when we study urbanization. We need not see that all regions should have the same type of sites, and they should be larger in dimension. These factors, are influenced by several other things. We cannot just expect that all the regions to have same kind of settlements with the same dimension. And this map also produced by Alchin, and this also has a very interesting pattern how these early kingdoms existed during the time of Ashoka. This is also one of the important period when, after the Mauryan empire formation, we see lot of developments across South Asia. We could see the Mauryan and post-Mauryan development as something distinct from the pre-Mauryan. From the time of Mauryan period, what happened was major parts of India were united, and this facilitated the communication networks. We could see a lot of maritime contacts as well during this period. However, the maritime contacts must have began in a much earlier period, but we need to do further research to understand. For example, we have evidence for a paper reported from Egypt, and also there are Phoenician flasks where cinnamaldehyde has been reported in the region around Israel. So, but we are in a very secure context from the Mauryan period as far as the long distance connection as well as interactions are concerned. Okay. Now we'll look into different regions. Already I told you in northwestern India there were major settlements like Taxila, Chasada, and when we come to Ganga Valley, we have numerous settlements, numerous cities, starting from Chandragedgar, and then we have Tamluk, which is not there in this map, Mahastangar in Bangladesh, and then we have settlements like Bangar, Champa, Pragladpur, and Sravasti, Ayodhya, and Kaushambi, and Ahichatra, and Mathura, and so many cities, and they were part of at some point of time, they were part of the Mahajanapadas. Post Mahajanapadas, these centers became much more prominent. That is one of the important aspect of the Ganga Valley urban centers. They are huge, and they also display a lot of monumental architecture, some of the settlements show fortification. Coming to Western India, we have a series of sites and settlements, as well as rocket caves affiliated to Buddhism, and they are very actively connected with the Indo-Roman trade. Many of these coastal ports are also mentioned in the Greco-Roman text. So we have a different kind of urbanization process in which maritime trade and Buddhism playing an important part in the Western India and Deccan, and several Buddhist stupas are also present in the hinterland. For example, the important site of Sanati in Karnataka. Then we have other sites like Dharanikota, and so many stupas are reported in Andhra, and many of these sites belong to the period of Shatavahanas. Then we come to further south, closer to Sri Lanka. We have sites like Archaeology, Burayur, and Karur and Musuris and Madurai, where they have recently excavated Kiradi and Arahankulam. Then in Sri Lanka, we have Mantai and Anuradhapura, and further south we have Tissa Maharama. So that is the overall pattern of urban centers in South Asia in the early historic period. And Monica Smith, who has studied these urban centers, she observes there are 60 plus cities in the range of 50 to 200 hectare range in this period, and that is one of the characteristic features of these early cities in South Asia. Now, one question is how these cities became very prominent in this period. We need to study the pre-urban phase of these cities. We will understand that these cities did not appear all of a sudden. There is a deeper history going into the formation of these cities in the early historic period. And some of the important cities I already mentioned, showed in the map, like Chandragedikar, Kaushambi, Mahastangar, Padaliputra, Shishupalkar, Ther, and Ujjain. They are spread across India. The next criteria, which is listed by Gordon Child, is this art. We have very important artistic representation in the form of Ashokan pillars. These pillars are very remarkable in terms of their finishing as well as their workmanship. Some scholars are of the opinion they were influenced by the Persian and other style of pillars, although we do not know how these artists were influenced. We can very well argue that this Mauryan period had craftsmen who could produce these kind of fantastic images. And during the Mauryan period, we also notice other forms of architectural remains, as at the sites of Pataliputra, where they have excavated remains at Mulahar and Pulandibag, and also at Rajagriha. They have formed cyclopean walls, suggesting that monumental buildings were very common features in this period. So definitely, besides this sculpture, there are also others like Didarg and Jakshi and other images. They point out that the Mauryan artist had attained some kind of fine skills, and they are reflected in some of the capitals of the Ashokan pillars. Then we have evidence of monumental buildings. In the sense, we can look at the caves at Barabar hills, and they definitely illustrate how these Mauryans they could create these monumental architecture. We have building remains buildings at several centers, fortifications, and other structures. Then at Sisupalkar, we have these pillars standing. Unfortunately, the superstructure is gone, and we find similar kind of brick architecture at several sites. This one is the fortification at Kaushambi, where you see a huge structure which is made of brick and which is part of the rampart wall, which was excavated by University of Allahabad. And similarly at Sisupalkar also they have documented a huge fortification wall, clearly suggesting that these cities, at least some of the early historic cities, they were fortified, meaning that they had clear space which has been demarcated, which has been restricted, probably because of political reasons, where they did not want enemies to attack these cities. Obviously, warfare was one of the important factor in the early historic period. We know about Ashoka's invasion of Kalinga and the lamentation of Ashoka in his inscription. Definitely, we should also give due credit to the kings of the Kalinga who could resist Ashoka. That is also a very important factor. Here we understand how these Kalingas were resisting the Mauryan expansion, but they could not withstand the Mauryan onslaught, and ultimately they had to give away, and leading to the formation of a major Mauryan empire. We do find a lot of Mauryan inscription in southern India, and Ashoka himself talks in his inscription how he sent his embassies to Sri Lanka and also southern part of India and also into the Greek region. So warfare was one of the important factor, and this was one of the important aspects of early historic urbanization. These are some of the wooden rampart, and they were excavated by ASA earlier, and they are part of the palace of Padaliputra. And this also suggests that we need not always look for brick structure or stone structures, and they have also found some pillar capitals here, and these early historic cities sometime even had wooden rampart. That's what we understand from this image. Right. And then in Anuradhapura also they have evidence of brick use in the area of citadel complex dating back to an early period. And Mahastangar also they have evidence of extensive use of brick use. In Bengal, use of brick was very common. And these are some of the images of Archimedu. When it comes to southern part of India, these urban centers are slightly smaller. Again, we should look at the context in which these centers are emerging. These were all different kinds of settlement. Archimedu was a port settlement where you find brick structures that were of relatively smaller size, but the brick sizes are very interesting. They measure 40 to 45 centimeter in length, 22 centimeter in width, and 4 to 5 centimeter or more in thickness. This is the first time where they introduce these brick for the construction of structure architecture. That is a very important development in southern India based on Wheeler stating and other contextual evidence. We understand that these buildings were mainly erected after 1st century BC. This is something we need to look at when we talk about urbanization in India or South Asia. It was not always, as a one-time event. It happened over a period of several centuries, and these developments were uneven. Sometimes it started early, sometimes it is later, and we see a lot of variation, and we need to undertake further research precisely at this point. understand this process of urbanization. These are some of the brick structures excavated by Vimla Begley at Arikamedu. These structures definitely indicate that these mercantile organization had created facilities for the production of various commodities. Arikamedu was a port located on the east coast, and this port was a major manufacturing center. And these people were producing a lot of commodities, probably textile and beads and so many other materials. They fabricated glass beads, stone beads, and then they also created shell bangles, and then they exported. Definitely we have evidence for craft specialization, which is one of the features of urbanization. And then we have this is another structure excavated at Arikamedu, where some of these structures are associated with waterlogged conditions, suggesting that these people were constructing some kind of structures adjacent to the water body. Probably they functioned as a port or some kind of wharf. We do not know what exactly they used. And these structures are very interesting. We find similar structures also at the site of Pattanam. At the site of Pattanam in Kerala, which was excavated by KCHR and Dr. Cherian, they have reported a wharf-like feature, which was made of brick. And in addition to that, they also have found a canoe, a part of a canoe which was made of single log of wood. They have also found some wooden bollards. Very interestingly, we notice certain kind of pattern in the among the early historic cities, and these people were planning their towns according to certain orientation. These towns were very planned, they were built brick, and this is what urban as far as these settlements are concerned. When we look at the rural settlements, we don't find such an extensive use of bricks or town planning. So especially when these people were assembling in a large number at these cities, they needed certain kind of spatial organization. They had to have their shops in a particular area, production centers in a particular area, and they had proper streets. That is what is urbanization is about. So these people are clearly organizing their space in terms of their commercial activities. If you look at the settlement of any Neolithic communities, they will be in a different pattern. In order to protect their cattle, the Neolithic people and some of the Iron Age communities, they placed their cattle in the center, and they were living around, because that kind of subsistence required a different kind of settlement pattern and settlement organization. But in the case of urban context, where people were coming face to face in order to undertake exchange of commodities and goods, they had to arrange them in a face-to-face manner. That is why they preferred square or rectangle or grid kind of pattern. And that's what urbanization is about. The space is very neatly organized, and they were also adopting certain measurement system. If you look at the size of the bricks here, they are 42 centimeter, clearly overlapping with the body based measurement of cubit or span, which some of the spans of some individuals, normally they come to the range of 40 to 42 centimeter, 40 to 42 centimeter. And this is a brick structure excavated at the site of Pattanam in Kerala, which is located very close to the wharf structure. So they have been storing materials Kerala is a high rainfall region where if you store materials, in a kind of wooden kind of structure or without any floor, the material get damaged. Suppose if they are storing pepper, they have to protect it from the rain. And that is why they have been storing material in such brick structure. The Tamil text also talk about these kind of structures where they stored pepper. The real purpose of this structure, we do not know, but this structure is located near the so-called water structure. So we could assume that this was used as a warehouse for storing commodities. And then we have another structure which is square in shape, and we find more and more structures. So this is one of the defining features of the urbanization that we notice here. And here we see that this particular structure has a vessel by the side. This is something very interesting and important. Okay. Next image. And another important development in the early historic period across South Asia is the introduction of these kind of ring wells. And these kind of ring wells were used for multiple purposes. Some of them were definitely used for drawing water. So this is another important factor of urbanization, where people were drawing water from properly built well. Unlike in a coastal settlements, where even now, if you look at today, some of the fisherfolk settlement, they will not have proper walls, proper wells, and they would just simply collect water from the sandy beach. There will not be any proper structure. But whereas settlements like Archaeology and Arhankulam and other sites, they built proper ring wells. This is one of the important features of the early historic period. Next was the roof tile. Roof tiles are another important feature which are found all over South Asia. This triple groove roof tile, they have been reported in Sri Lanka, they have been reported in Southeast Asia, and they are occurring all over. If at all, one feature that unites South Asia, it is this triple grooved roof tile. So which definitely indicates that people were traveling across South Asia. They were exchanging ideas. They were, the ideas were moving. We do not know from where, from which area this spread, but definitely it indicates that people were communicating at that point of time across, and they were using identical material culture. This is a close-up view of the roof tiles with the triple grooves. And we also have these kind of soakage jar, which sometime could have been used as some kind of toilet. This was excavated at the site of Pattanam. And then, so far we looked at the material requirements, material manifestations of urban centers, and more than the material representation and the political organization, the ideas, ideology, knowledge system, and philosophy, they were very important for the rise of urbanization, where people could live peacefully. And this is where the literature becomes very important. Normally, when we talk about early historic period, we give too much focus to that script. It is not just a script. Script is just one symbol or one kind of symbolic expression. What is more important is the philosophy, the ideology. Mainly, we have several Buddhist texts and Arthasastra, and then we have early Tamil texts, and then we have Mahamamsa occurring in Sri Lanka. These literary narratives were very important, and these narratives themselves suggest that these people gave lot of importance to education, and some of these people were probably were vegetarian. We can also notice that Ashoka was issuing a warning to the Adavikas about the killing of animals. So the ideas of Buddhism was very important, and other sects were also very important in conveying ideas that is meant suitable for harmonious living. That was very important. We also find in the early Tamil texts several references to this idea of harmonious living, like Yadum Ure Yavarum Kalir, where they say that all places are my place, all men are my associates, like that kind of expression. And also Thidum Nandrum Pirar Vara. It also conveys that our own deeds, our condition is impacted by our own deeds. So these kind of philosophies were also very important for the rise of urbanization, where people could resolve their issues amicably by using these philosophies and ideologies. So I give more importance to such text too, rather than the invention of writing. Writing is a simple way of, it is a symbolic. More than the writing itself, it is the idea of, it's a philosophy or the ideology of living amicably or mutually understanding each other, or conveying the higher values so that people could resolve their issues and live amicably and involved in proper exchange of commodities. That was more important in the early historic period. So I would suggest this was a very important factor here. Then we also talked about political formation. Political formations are very important for the development of urbanization, because political systems give some kind of support to the urbanization process. Urbanization can happen only when there is a political stability, or when people were amicably resolving their issues. So the political formation during the time of post Mahajanapata period, rise of Magad, and the rise of Mauryan Empire, and the Indo-Greeks, and the Shatavahana, and the southern kingdoms of Chera, Chola, Pandya, and other kind of political entities that are spoken in Greco-Roman texts. They were also important factors for the rise of these urbanization processes, because these political entities gave congenial environment and political stability. Though we may be debating whether some of them were states, some of them were not states, whether they were early state, I would prefer to call them as political organization or some kind of early states. What I suggest is the stronger state-like entities emerged only in the later period, post Gupta or post Pallava period. The early entities were very loosely formed system, including the Mauryan Empire. Yes, it was for a brief time, but again, their organization was not probably as strong as the later systems, or as organized as the later systems. And then coming to these ideologies, already I told you these ideologies of Buddhism, Jainism, they contributed tremendously. You can see these ideologies moving to various parts of South Asia, including Tamil Nadu as well as Sri Lanka. Tamil Nadu, very interestingly, we have evidence of Buddhism in the coastal context like Kaveri, Pumpattinam, Andhra, whereas a lot of evidence of Jainism are associated Ajivaka sects existing in the hinterland Tamil Nadu, and we also have the beginning of script up, at many of these sites. There are a lot of theories on the origin of the scripts. We come to that point later. And yeah, now we are here to the idea of literacy, Ashokan Brahmi, and there's a lot of debates going on where exactly the Brahmi script organized, whether we should call it as Ashokan Brahmi, whether we should call it as Tamil Brahmi or Tamili or Sri Lankan Brahmi. There are a lot of debates. There are three possible suggestions that have come up. One theory states that the script emerged early in Sri Lanka and then moved into the Indian subcontinent. Another theory states that script developed in Tamil Nadu and then went to other area. Another view, which is a very conventional view, which argues that script developed in northern part of India, Brahmi, and then spread. We'll not go into the details of the debate. This debate is raging on. And the date of the script is also a problem. Some scholars now tend to push back the date to an earlier period, which several scholars have suggested this is a probability. And recently, based on the dating of period, they have based the date of Brahmi to Tamil Brahmi to 500 or 600 BCE. I think this also needs to be studied further. So I think as far as the script is concerned, we need to do further research. We need to have more research, but there is a possibility that the script existed before Ashokan period. We can be very sure about it. Only thing is we need to excavate more. We have only limited sites excavated. Another thing is the amount of early inscription and pottery found in Tamil Nadu, and these sites are very phenomenal. And also in the megalithic graffiti, we find a lot of writing. So there is something going on right from the Ayanich period, and we need to research further. But mainly, when it comes to literacy, the Ashokan inscriptions are very important. These are all long texts where Ashoka effectively used the script for conveying certain ideas of peace to the people. He's trying to connect the people using the Dhamma, and these are the longest records of early India. So Ashoka has very cleverly used the script, and also it was backed up by some kind of administration support to disseminate the ideas of Ashoka and the kingship and his idea of benevolence and his idea of administration to the people in the frontier. So these inscriptions are very important, and these inscription also conveyed these ideas, important ideas to the people. So Ashoka was responsible for the dissemination of this kind of text, and also dissemination of Buddhism, at least in some context. Buddhism might have started spreading even before Ashoka. At some point of time, Ashoka gives some kind of strong support to this. And okay, then we come to the long distance maritime trade. As far as long distance maritime trade is concerned, we have a lot of evidence. This is also an important factor. And India has been trading with West Asia right from the time of Indus civilization. And we do notice, a lot of evidence for that, especially from the um, early historic period. And the Indo-Roman trade has been very active from the first century BCE. But definitely there existed trade, but probably it was in a limited scale, or we need to get more evidence. We can see the monsoon winds powering the trading connections. India and South Asia was well connected. As you know, South Asia lies in the center of the Indian Ocean, connecting different region. As a result, the travelers from the west, they reach India and then take some kind of rest or exchange goods, and then move to the Southeast Asia and other regions. In a sense, South India and Sri Lanka more particularly acted as some kind of intermediaries. Similarly, we have several important ports starting right from Gujarat down to Tamlok. So the maritime dimensions become very prominent in the early historic period. I would suggest that this was also an important factor for the rise of urbanization. This is a map suggesting the sites located described in the Periplus, located in the broader Indian Ocean region. So by this time, first century CE, the knowledge of India and the Indian Ocean had spread across to the entire Afro-Asian world. People were familiar, the Periplus, Murray, Eritrea very vividly describes about the Indian ports and hinterland and the polities. So definitely main cities by about the turn of the common era, we have numerous cities emerged not only in the hinterland but also in the coastal areas. In my view, some of the coastal cities developed slightly later when compared to the hinterland cities. In the hinterland cities of India, they were supported by the pre-urban phase cultural development, mainly in the proto-historic. In the if you take northern India, OCP and painted greater cultural developments led to the formation of hinterland cities. Similarly, the Ancient Megalithic cultures in southern India, other Chalcolithic cultures in other part, Chalcolithic and Iron Age, they contributed to the hinterland cities, whereas the coastal towns probably began to emerge slightly later, at least during the second urbanization, when the trade intensified. We see a lot of these trade routes linking the southern Asia with entire Indian Ocean regions, and these important nodes become, especially the nodes that connected these trade routes, became the urban center. For example, Barigas or Baruch and Musiri, and then we have Alchemid, Arakkampalam, Tamluk. They became very important urban centers. And similarly, we have this process is not happening not only in South Asia, all across the Indian Ocean region. We have the site of Bernike, which has been excavated by Stephen Sidebotham. Recently, they have found an image of Buddha, and this is spoken very well by this William Dalrymple in his book Golden Road. I think that William Dalrymple's work is very important because it highlights the role of these maritime networks and how India has been a major contributor, and mainly the South Asia as such in the broader sense. If you say how South Asia has very importantly contributed to the maritime network, we find materials that went from west coast of Kerala at Bernike, pottery, rooted ware is another important ceramics which scholars fix its origin at Tamluk or Chandragedugar region. So we have all these materials, peoples, ideas circulating not only within South Asia but also with the broader Indian Ocean region, and gradually forming these regional cultural traditions in India. 1 second. Yeah, then we have these kind of evidences from related to South India. We have pottery inscription reading Kottapuman. We have pepper in a pot excavated at Bernike. Then we have some Indian pottery, and Bernike was a major cosmopolitan center where not only Indians and people from different parts of the Indian Ocean assembled and traded. And Archimedes, and also the Roman coins. Roman coins, again, we were talking about wealth as one of the features of urbanization. The amount of Roman coins that are found in southern India is very phenomenal. They are found all over India. Maybe I think it is something to do with the value attributed to the Roman coin in southern India. People did not melt or convert, and probably they wanted to preserve. That is why you are finding a lot of gold coins. Probably in the context of northern India, these Roman coins could have contributed a lot to the coinage of the Guptas. We don't know, it is a probability. Whereas these variation in the distribution seen in the map could be attributed to the curative value of the coins among the people in southern India. They also indicate how these trades benefited the region of India, how people these were exchanging things. Again, earlier we were talking about the concept of balance of payment being in favor of India. In his recent book is heavily criticized how we cannot extend the contemporary notions into the past, because at that point of time there was no concept of nation as such when these Romans traded. And also we cannot extend the logic of balance of payment being in favor of India. Again, the same thing holds true as far as urbanization is concerned. When we talk about urbanization has different meaning in different point of time. When we talk about contemporary urbanization in 21st century, it is entirely different. But historical urbanization, we are dealing with a different kind of process here. So we need to be cautious. We have also evidence for consumption of Roman wine. We have amphora shells distributed from different parts of India. Early Tamil literature gives a narrative, beautiful narrative that Yamanar Tanda Vinayman Nankalam Unnodu Vandu Kariyodu Pek. There it says that Purananur 56 song that the Yamuna wine was, consumed by the Pandyan kings who were supplied by the beautiful damsels in a fine wine cups. That kind of narrative occurs in the early Tamil literature. Again, even the taste of wine is also could be associated with a kind of new way of living. People consuming non-local goods, that also could be seen as a kind of urbanization. And goods like rouletted ware. This is also distributed in several sites, even in the hinterland, where people are, consuming these kind of produce in the remote areas. And these are some of the ports of southern part of India. Coming to this final, I have just 2 slides. I'll finish soon. The concept of rural. So far I've been presenting about the urban landscape, cities, but at the same time, I think apart from the urban landscapes, the rural landscapes are also very important. Urbanization should be seen as a continuous process, starting from somewhere from 600 BCE to 300 CE. It was happening at different phases and with a lot of variations. And for a more nuanced understanding, we need to further excavate the archaeological site, because the current excavations are very limited. But one thing is very certain: these urban cities, the urban centers, as well as the urban process was not all of a sudden. There were antecedent developments happening for at least more than 1,000 years in different parts of India that culminated in the early historic cities. We have reference to Kurinji, Marudam, Mullai, and Neidal, Palai in the early Tamil text, and they also clearly indicate the uneven cultural developments that prevailed in this part of the South Asia, where as we sometimes assume, the cultural development was not uniform. There were so-called tribal communities, there were hunter-gatherers, there were pastoralists. Even within the Harappan and ambit, these communities were there. Even today, we have sentinelists and other communities living in Andaman and Nicobar Islands, even in this period. So we have uneven cultural developments all across, and we had rural settlements and as well as rural communities playing a very important part, especially supplying of raw materials. And for example, this many of these cities thrived on producing various material goods. For example, if they were making bangles out of this turbidella pyrum or chank shells, they were coming from the rural, coastal communities. Similarly, they were collecting precious raw materials, animal hides, and everything. And this is what Daniel Stiles talks about the forager and the city's interaction and action in a very important paper. So the rural India and these rural communities, like we have the Beddas in Sri Lanka and other tribal communities living in the hills, they were also contributing to the urbanization indirectly and the exchange of commodities because they were the suppliers. We also have evidence of gold jewelry in the Nilgiri burials, and there is one Roman coin reported from the burials. It is said the so-called tribal communities of the Western Ghats, they were supplying pepper. So when we look at the early historic urbanization, we should not see it as a process that affected only the few urban centers. Actually, it is a process that was going on all across the region, in which several communities participated, but these important nodes became the centers of trade, and that is how they became urban centers. There are two points here. How these urban centers emerged, what I would suggest is the hinterland centers that came up due to political activities. For example, centers like Magadha and others, they probably emerged due to the internal cultural developments, internal exchange, hinterland exchange, whereas these coastal towns emerged as a result of long distance trade. So clearly, we see multiple factors, multiple processes acting upon the South Asian urbanization. Another important point I wanted to highlight is the idea of decolonization and looking into South Asian epistemologies in understanding the cultural development. This is where I would like to say C.J. Thompson's three-age system that can be in a way enhanced by the ideas of Thnai concept found in the work of Tolkapiam. We need to have some kind of new perspectives of these cultural development, wherein if you look at the narratives and the inscription, we can inscription and as well as our Indian texts, as well as Indian ethnography, as well as an anthropology, we'll be able to better understand the cultural development. That is why I've been arguing that we need to look at the literature, Indian literature. Actually, there are a lot of description um, found in the literature. I have not gone into the detail. Actually, Sonali Kakawala has listed how these early literature speaks about these urban centers and how these urban cities are narrated. So I did not go into the detail here. Finally, I am coming to the last slide of my presentation. So we should see urbanization as a continuous process starting from 600 to BCE to 300 CE. We need to further map this spatially and temporally. The amount of sites that we have excavated is very limited, and also the material cultural mapping we have not sufficiently to understand the process. So when we do that, we will clearly understand when script evolved. We need not focus on individual traits like when brick was introduced, So if we try to map these cultural materials from the excavated sites, we will be able to understand how this urbanization process happened. And Kiradi is a very important site. It gives us some clue that the certain development were definitely indigenous. Similarly, as I said, these urban developments were due to the two-way process: internal cultural development as well as external development, pan South Asian and Indian Ocean processes acting upon. But the core, I would suggest, the internal cultural developments were very important. These internal settlements were consuming a lot of goods, and earlier we were thinking only in terms of things that were exporting, and especially from the coastal side. But people were also consuming goods. If you look at the cornelian beads, if you look at the bronze objects, if you look at the amount of rouletted ware, and people who were in the hinterland were also consuming a lot of commodities that came from the as a result of the long distance network. That is something which we need to relook at. When we talk about excavated site, we always think of foreign export, but internal consumption was very important, where people had to give, the traders have to give some kind of commodities for exchange. So we have different kind of political formation coexisting. We have early chiefdoms to pre-state formation, and also multiple forms of social and ethnic groups, sometimes tribal communities. They were all coexisting across South Asia. But urban formations were limited to certain nodes, and Buddhism and Jainism, they had a very key role in the urbanization process, and some of the people who wrote texts also probably belong to these ideologies. We have local exchange networks, and both long distance interactions, both were acting in these regions. We have maritime interactions and mercantile organization. We have inscriptions which also talk about the association of the merchants. Merchants are seen as one of the pioneers of development in South Asian urbanization. They were carrying, they were traveling, they were carrying goods, they were carrying ideas, and they were the entrepreneurs who supported the craft specialization. Some of these settlements, like Archimedu or Pattanam, or at least some part of these settlements, would have been created by the mercantile corporation. Unfortunately, we don't have much literary evidence to corroborate this, but we have short inscriptions referring to nigamas, and we have also other forms of settlements where they were producing specialized commodities. So we cannot underestimate the role of mercantile organization in creating certain facilities at the early urban centers, which obviously belong to the local chieftains. Local chieftains came and they claimed over the entire cities, like Avaripatim was claimed by the Chola, and Musaris was claimed by the Cheras, where the poets were composing texts probably in a later context. That is how the cities that emerged out of mercantile activities and commercial exchange, they were appropriated and controlled by the political entities. We have clear example of these political entities controlling the ports, as well as these coastal areas, and that is recorded in the Tamil text as well as in the Greco-Roman text, where the kings had a specific interest in the maritime trade. They wanted to control, they wanted the ships to come to their port so that they could get some kind of wealth. So when you look at the process of urbanization across South Asia, it gradually began around 600 BCE, and after 300 CE, probably there was I wouldn't say decline, I would say dispersal. Probably the urban dispersal happened, where I think urban farms continued in this period in a smaller scale. They became part of the Nagaram or these mercantile settlements, probably these mercantile corporations which were together in sites like Archimedu or Pattanam together became smaller units in dispersed. That may be a possible explanation, because we do notice the mercantile corporation existing in smaller settlements from 8th 9th century onwards, even in the Pallava time. So one possibility is the mercantile corporations who came together into the coastal areas, because in the early historic period, because they could access the raw material, they could access the market, became dispersed into smaller units in the early medieval and later period. This probably this led to the visible decline of urban center. Obviously, the long distance trade declined post Roman Empire, and we can see the rise in the long distance trade in the 8th and 9th century with the rise of Tiruchirappalli and other inscriptions. So this urban process need to be better understood by re-looking at some of the excavated site, as well as excavating site with with some specific problem-oriented research. This such an approach could help us to better understand the urbanization process. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Selvakumar, for your insightful and very inspiring lecture. As you have pointed out, urbanization in South Asia has a rich and a very complex history that can be traced through various phases marked by a series of transformating phases that reflect broader socio-cultural changes. And you have really explained urbanization very well and talked in detail about each characteristics as defined by Gordon Child, with examples, with examples that with a lot of archaeological sites, which with lots of archaeological evidences, and you have also mentioned lots of reference in the literature. So now with this I request if there are any questions from our online participants. Okay, so
There are two people. One is Vijay Ratne
so we
Bohingama.
have Bohingam sir, please go ahead with your question.
I mean, thank you so much, Bina, for organizing this, and also it was so nice to listen to my friend Professor Selvakumar. Unfortunately, I missed first 15 minutes or so because I was in something else, and then the connection wasn't that good. Internet connection I'm talking about. This is also an area actually which I am interested in, that period from around the middle of the first millennium BC onwards, at least to the middle of the 13th century until the Anuradhapura, what we call it, the Anuradhapura kingdom collapse. It's very interesting that, Selva, if I may call him, Selva, because that's how I'm used to call him. Yes, it is very interesting, how, this whole process started at that time, the middle of the first millennium BC, 600, 500 BC. What I see is rather than we kind of try to see where, let's say Brahmi script started or originated or things like that, what we need to see, how the entire region was, interconnected through various, as Selva rightly said, trade, commercial, as well as, ideological, networks, I mean, people have spoken about ideology being one of the most important aspects that connected these regions, which was, facilitated by trading networks. So probably when you said like, Sri Lankan origin of Brahmi script, also I'm sure you are referring to the evidence from Citadel Anuradhapura, very well dated by, late Dr. Siran Darnigala, dated to something like 550 BC. And what we see by this time, even in the literature, and even in archaeological record, not only in Anuradhapura, but also in Mahatita, Kantarodei, and interior other sites, that we see network that has connected the entire region, and that network is, as you said, like um, it indicates both political, cultural, religious, commercial, interactions. So I think we need to look at this broader picture, and not just only excavating new sites and trying to unearth more and more material. That is important, but also to re-look at the material and the way in which we sort of look at these ideas of urbanism, urban forms and characteristics as well. People have kind of challenged the idea of golden child, what we look at as urban forms and characteristics as well. When I listen to you, in fact, I myself have seen some of these things in India, Arikamedu, and even Pattanam as well. So, I'm sure Selva is very well aware of the similarity that we see in sites like Manthai, Kantarodei, and Anuradhapura. So that similarity in material culture is not just coincident. It's that tells us something for us, invite for us to have that broader perspective and try to understand what is going on. I think Selva very clearly explain it. What is missing perhaps is scholarly interaction that requires in more broader sense, people, and that kind of multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary approach to material, understanding, interpreting this material, looking at, for example, I'm not sure whether Selva has seen much of Manthai, Anuradhapura and Kantar material, like in not in literature, not in other people's interpretations, but if there was a possibility and an opportunity for Selva to come and look at this material, and also other experts from Sri Lanka to go and see material, that makes a big difference. Literature, as you said, is very important by this time, from 6th century BC onwards. This is very important. I think, yes, Selva opened up a very interesting, quotes. And so we need to look at literature, archaeology, and also to change the way
most of the time when it comes to early historic, they tell us script. Actually, script is nothing. Script is okay, but more than the script, I think the texts are important. See, in a conventional introduction, they say the period when script was introduced starts history. It is not the script. I think it is these ideas that they express through the literature. See, when you talk about literacy, sometime in government thing, they claimed 100% literacy. If somebody is able to write ABCD to Z or any alphabet, do you think they are literate? Or the people who understand the subtle concepts of life, subtle concepts of, amicable, existence? What is literacy? That so far we have been focusing only on the writing the script as such. I think that is why I just slightly modified some of Gordon Child's some of these criteria to look into the text and ideology. I think that is more important. What you are raising is very interesting, because as students of history we are told script. Script is nothing. It is the idea, how you are spreading the idea, either through script or through oral. There could be people spreading the ideas through oral means. Even that was also important for the development of urbanization. Yes, Bohin, you please go ahead. I interrupted you.
No. What is? You and I are academics. Like we we are involved in teaching and supervision of students. What I see in the younger generation, they don't seems to have this broader perspective to look at uh, you know the archaeological material, then textual evidence, and top of that philosophical theoretical understanding to sort of understand that broader perspective. I would like to remind when I was a student, right after my advanced level, what Dr. Sudarshan Seneviratne told me. He told me to develop this broader pan-Asian perspective. At that time, I didn't have any idea as to what it means. So Selva was showing us various material unearthed from across the Indian Ocean, these great sites. So I mean, for us to what Bina has been doing is to bring scholars from in the SAARC region and provide us a online platform where we can exchange, discuss these matters, so that we can develop that pan-Asian perspective. And here we are interested in looking at beyond political and other geographical boundaries. Cultures were not bounded well, of course, but at that time the period that we talked about is the say middle of first millennium BC to the at least well, there were political boundaries, but as Selva said, people were moving, goods were moving, goods were not moving alone, but ideas were moving. So that we need to understand that, and I think this is very interesting. And I thank Bina as well as Selvakumar for bringing in these excellent ideas. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your feedback, sir. Now, so we have another Razik. You have raised your hand. You have any question? Please go ahead and please keep it brief as we are running short of time. Razik, is there anyone?
Hello, hello,
Yeah. Please go ahead with your question.
hello, ma'am. My name is Razik, and I'm a student of archaeology studying in Gujarat. I have a question. Before that, thank you so much, Selvakumar sir, for giving such a beautiful and wonderful lecture. Uh, Sir, I wanted to ask about triple grooved roof tiles that you discussed during the presentation of Pattanam. So I wanted to know whether do we find these roof tiles uh, outside Pattanam or across other places in Indian subcontinent. The other question with regard to this roof tile was in the present day we find these roof tiles used in South India. Uh, so is there any link between past and present in with regard to the usage of roof tiles?
Yeah, actually, we find this roof tiles all over India. Arkimedu, even in Chandragedugar, Tamlok, Central India, Northern India, and also in one of the southeast, in Sri Lanka, Anuradhapura, it is there. It is there at Anuradhapura. It is there all over. And the roof tile story, I have another roof tile I'll show you. There is one roof tile which is called Chola roof tile. We have parallels in Vietnam. As far as roof tile is concerned, I see a circuit linking Kerala coast then to Japan. So we have a lot of ideas spreading across the Indian Ocean. We see very interesting similarity in roof tiles. We cannot tell from where they originated. We have another so-called pointed roof tile occurring in Vietnam. So roof tile is one area where people have been interacting. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
What
Sir.
was your next question?
The next question was is there any connection between past and present with regard to the usage of roof tiles? Like we find this triple grooved roof tiles in Pattanam as, and we also find the same type of roof tiles being used in the present day. So is there any kind of relation
No,
or connection?
actually, there is. I have written in one of my papers, roof tiles keep changing. We don't have any direct connection between past and present. These connections existed till the colonial period. But one of the issues of present, it is there. The way Kerala roofs are created, Kerala, roofs, they also applied copper sheets. Copper sheet application is, I think it was known in China also. They are used to apply a copper sheet, which refers to in South Indian as inscription as Vimanam Pun Veinda. Pun means not gold. They say that the copper sheet, they copper sheeted the roof, especially in places like Kerala, where the rainfall is high. So the sloping roof tiles continue even today in Kerala, and that continuity is there in terms of roofing. So they try to use these different kind of roof tiles. In some way, there is a continuity in terms of slope of the roof, but not in terms of the roof tile. Okay,
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Okay, so
Bina,
yes,
Bina.
yes.
Now to roof tile the low, this, the metal roofing. Selva, one of the greatest buildings in Anuradhapura, Bina, knows, close to Mahastupa in Lower Mahapaya. The roof was like, bronze in a plated roof, according to the literature.
Yeah, even in Kerala, they were plated. South India, they were plated because they were all tin or copper. So the copper is not a major source. It may have some connection with Southeast Asia or China. I think we have a lot of connectivity with China also in terms of architecture, and that is something we need to explore. Yeah.
Okay. Now we'll take just last one question. Last one question, if anyone has. Navjot
Navjot
Kaur?
Kaur.
Navjot Kaur, yeah.
Yes.
So please,
Am I
please
audible?
yeah, and please keep your question
Yes,
short.
I'll
Yeah,
be brief. Thank
yeah.
you, sir. Thank you for this excellent presentation. I am just wondering to know your views about. So, when we talk about this period, we talk about big sites, we talk about grand sites, urbanized centers. But in your opinion, where do we place these small rural settlements or these small size settlements that we get across the landscape, so in your opinion, what is their role in this entire urbanized setup?
Yeah, I'll tell you. Yeah, actually, see, I didn't have time to prepare the map. There are sites where we have only one roulated were reported. There are sites where we have 12,000 roulated were reported. So the sites which is located 200 kilometer, 300 kilometer from the coast with one roulated ware with a lot of bones. So they are also important because they were part of the network. That is why I said urban and rural landscape. These people were supplying raw material, they were supplying animal hides for the larger market. And there is a poem, a Tamil poem, which says that there was this one hunter probably. He did not have money he did not have anything to drink toddy. What he does, he tells his young son who keeps a tusk, elephant tusk at home, he tells him go and bring, and he
Mhm.
exchanges it for toddy.
Hmm.
See, now the same ivory, the tusk, elephant tusk, that goes to this toddy shop person, owner, will reach the Roman ship. Maybe it went into Thermopholon, who knows?
Right.
There is, he's asking what is the title of the poem. I don't remember the reference. It is there in one of the paper. I can find out and tell. See how these goods and commodities that were collected by the people went in. So the Roman, any kind of trade and exchange is a cooperative effort. Even I have seen in 1990, I went to Kodumanal excavation as a student. There, this local people used to come, the trader in a bicycle asking for precious gems.
Mhm.
See, the farmers in their field, they used to collect sometimes the precious stones. This fellow will collect it and take it to the market, and where they will make it and export it. So it is a network
Hmm.
of trade in which even a hunter, even a forager, they would have contributed. Then the commodities were collected, they went into the main market through the intermediaries. Somebody who comes in bicycle, now he takes it. Similarly, at that point of time, this network which linked the urban and rural landscapes, that, you know, contributed to the trade. It is this network we should see, like this Toddy, shop owner who would have given this, he would have got the ivory for a tusk for a very limited, just giving 2 or 3 jars of toddy, but he would have sold it for a higher price. Then the Roman trader, they would have gone to higher price. Then it would have gone to the carver, ivory carver. Then it would have gone into some, furniture somewhere in Europe, in Rome, say Pompeii or Herculaneum or anywhere. See,
Right.
that is how this system works. So small sites also were part of the exchange network. The urban rural landscapes, the wealth and everything came to the main people who fabricated material. This I argued, glass like things, so that they can exchange the material for a low cost, which they will sell it for a higher profit. This is what happens in the mercantile activity.
Right. No, because in the area where I work, we don't have urban centers at all. So all the sites that we have got since the beginning of, let's say, early historic period, they're all small settlements, maybe maximum of 4 hectares, not more than that. So they're
Yeah,
all
that is size. That's what I said. Size doesn't matter. They
right.
would have given some kind of supply. They would have supplied some material.
Right.
So you may find 1 or 2 related ware or some kind of material. They could have in the process consumed. Sometimes small beads could have come. See, it is not necessary that we have to find amphora in all the settlements. There could be other forms of exchange.
Right.
How these local people were exchanging in the network. That matters.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you once again, Dr. Selvakumar. It was a great honor to have you with us for the SAARC Special Lecture Series. And before we conclude, I would like to remind the online participants that we regularly organize these lectures and online, and the regular updates are available on SAARC website as well as in the SAARC Facebook. So you can go to the Facebook and you can get the updates. So thank you once again for joining us online.